Hi guys, it's Claire Nakti from Cosmetic Astrology. I'm back with another video. This is more of like an informal casual video. I've been doing mostly big presentation videos lately, so it makes it so I'm only uploading like once a month or less. So I wanted to start doing some more casual videos again in between my other videos like I used to. Originally, the content in this video I was going to publish on an Instagram article or a website article, but I figured I'd just make it a YouTube video instead because it got kind of more extensive than I thought it would be. And basically what I'm going to be talking about today is I'm going to be expanding on the mysteries of mimicking people. When people are copying you and making you feel like essentially like they're sucking your soul out, or when you yourself are losing yourself because of an internal desperate urge to copy someone else. I think most of us have experienced either one of those things or both of those things at some point in our life. And in this video I'll explore what causes this to happen on a spiritual and astrological level, like astrologically who or what type of people might copy you, and what type of people might you be susceptible to losing your own kind of path and destiny from having an urge to copy theirs instead, as well as the very real spiritual consequences of copying people and when people copy you. And astrologically, it really involves the North Node and the South Node, which in Vedic astrology are called Rahu and Ketu. Rahu really relating to the more so shallow, rational, copied knowledge, and then the true gnosis, the true experiential knowledge coming from Ketu. So I'm going to be talking about knowledge, but then I'm also going to be talking about copying a person's flow of personal essence, a person's unique channeled creativity when someone copies that from someone else. So initially, copying might sound like a little bit of a petty topic. It's something that people tend to mature out of doing as they find themselves in their path, but it actually still happens a lot more with famous thinkers and things like that than you might be aware of. It's actually very spiritually important, which is proven throughout the way that it's explored in many mythologies throughout cultures. So it's not just petty copying, but also the copying of someone's entire path or methods for liberation whenever each person is unique in how they achieve that. And I'm touching on this too based on the Hasta nakshatra video that I did recently, how often in the media Hasta mimics people, and I'll talk about how this actually relates somewhat to Rahu. So this video is kind of an extension of that lesson on Hasta nakshatra, also focusing a lot on Rahu, but exploring it a little bit more philosophically. So I'm going to start off by talking about kind of first analyzing in myth when the concept of copying and mimicking was originally shed light on, which is especially in myth regarding writing and its introduction to humanity, and how the written word flooded the world with pseudo-intellectuals or pseudo-gnostics, giving people the power to cultivate the illusion of knowledge while actually lacking it. The Egyptian god of writing, known as Thoth, is often seen accompanied by an ape, the Ape of Thoth. This ape ensures that all things that are put into writing are misunderstood by many people. The Ape of Thoth, he illustrates the impurity of the written word, which apes the purity of the consciousness that spoke the words, but does not have the substance or essence. And that's one reason why esoteric teachings often place such an emphasis on word of mouth instruction, in order that people don't misunderstand something and believe they know it, but don't have the experiential energetic aspect transferred to them, and so they then pervert and distort the idea. And in spoken word, some element of the substance is transferred because it relies on one's capability, when there's no note-taking involved or writing involved, it relies on one's capability in regards to memory at least, and understanding and comprehension, but still very little is transferred because you're still a parrot of the person who told it to you, which is why at a certain stage you even have to go beyond any kind of teacher, which I'll talk about soon. To first illustrate this whole concept for this whole video, I want to start out with a parable from Socrates. And when it came to letters, Thoth said, "This invention, O king, will make the Egyptians wiser and improve their memory. For I have discovered a stimulant of both memory and wisdom." But Thelema replied, "O most crafty Thoth, one man has the lot of being able to give birth to technologies, but another to assess both the harm and benefit to those who would make use of them. Even you at present, being the father of letters, through good intentions, spoke the opposite of its potential. For this, by the neglect of memory, will produce forgetfulness in the souls of those who learn it, since through their faith in writing they recollect things externally by means of another's etchings, and not internally from within themselves. You invented a stimulant not of memory but of reminder, and you are procuring for its students the reputation of wisdom, not the truth of it. For having heard much, but without learning anything, they will seem to you to be knowledgeable of many things, but for the most part really ignorant and difficult to associate with, having become wise seeming instead of wise." To summarize, the concept of writing in many philosophies and religion is shown to allow people to ape or create a distorted parody of true wisdom or creativity through allowing people to pretend and believe they're wise, through giving the masses access to shallow residual knowledge without connection to the intuition-based font of wisdom that understanding or creativity stems from. So in most religions, it's insisted that there are secret esoteric meanings behind the scriptures, known only to those who possess insight to access them. And these meanings are shockingly different from the outer doctrine, which is a covering over the true teaching to ward off the profane from gaining access to the most holy and beautiful sanctuary so that they don't desecrate it. And this is why people who obsess only over old scriptures or ancient texts tend to be big victims of this affliction, which in Western occultism is known as the curse of the magus, which is another way of describing the discord and misunderstood interpretations of spiritual or occult teachings. All writing is by the very act of putting it into writing both true and untrue, and it requires a person to go beyond the logical mind to understand the spirit behind the letter if they want to access the real occult teachings which are present behind all spiritual scriptures. To better illustrate what I mean about learning to distill personal experiential knowledge for oneself and not simply rely on others to feed it to them, consider, for example, if a girl reads all the books there are about astral projection and she sets herself up as a teacher of it based on all of the stuff she's compiled from books, but she has no experience of it or very little experience of it. But she kind of pretends the experience of these writers is her own experience and develops a huge following and makes a living off of it. However, because none of what she states is based on her own experience, she misleads all who she advises and is nothing more than a blind person leading other blind people, because she doesn't discover and experience the subject first, but is simply a monkey or a parrot copying the people who wrote their experience, which makes her expression a degraded and faulty expression of the truth that those people had access to, and also robs those who truly accessed it, because the girl takes on the false covering that she is like them in order to reap the benefits without having the substance. And this is why those who are the most deprived of mystical experiences often obsess the most over written texts, because they feel so enslaved to and dependent on those who can access it that they become very frantic and cherish the writings, which are actually shells or excrement of the fruit that those who spoke or wrote the words digested and assimilated into themselves, and those people merely kind of throw out the writings or teachings or creations for those who find them nourishing at their present level of development. This is why the Mahavidya Matangi, the goddess of the spoken word, has a parrot on her shoulder and is associated with leftovers. So a metaphor for this is like when you eat a banana, you enjoy the fruit and then you throw out the skin. The person who learns how to obtain experiential knowledge for themselves or connect to their daimon, their kundalini, the Ketu realm within themselves to begin channeling true creations is like the eater of the fruit of the banana, and they digest and assimilate what is useful of the fruit, and then their body discards the rest as waste. Essentially, the product of their creation or their knowledge demonstrating that they've eaten and digested the fruit. It's a remnant that proves their knowledge or creativity. And those who are following a being who's eating fruits, instead of learning how to eat the fruits themselves, are really just eating the leftover husks and the waste of those who produce and assimilate the experiential knowledge themselves. And as someone who only has access to the remnants begins copying the remnant, a change begins to take place where the remnants keep being torn into smaller and smaller and more degraded pieces by those without access to their destiny and without access to the font of truth. They begin degrading the knowledge or the idea over time. And people resign themselves to those degrading states due to their inability to go inward and become totally dependent on and consuming the leftovers of either a spiritual teacher or an artist or a figure that they admire, which is like Rahu's frantic urge to begin producing and externalize something before you actually have the substance, rather than doing the work that involves time and discipline connecting to your Ketu, the work which is climbing the tree, picking the fruit, peeling it, and finally eating it and digesting it. Instead of becoming a sun in learning how to individuate and understand their own godhood, they copy or imitate others or resign themselves to being a small planet orbiting that person who succeeded in becoming a sun. So those who copy spiritual teachers or copy anyone at all, even celebrities or friends, in order to gain power or fame or recognition, they face the really bad consequences of doing so, which is kind of actually becoming fuel for the person's destiny that you're copying, no person can take another person's destiny or follow another person's path, and in doing so, they shortchange themselves by giving up on their own destiny. So to resign yourself as an ape of someone else is really a terrible fate, because all you're really doing is distorting the truth of the person that you're copying in an imperfect way, because you didn't have the patience or the drive to discover your own internal truth and path and unique contribution. So when someone is copying you and copying something that came truly from your own gnosis, and you see them doing so, sometimes you even can feel frantic, because that externalized form of your creation, the thing that you're channeling, is essentially the fulfillment of your personal Rahu. So if you're creating something really special or have attained special kind of knowledge on something, something rare and unique that has to do with your personal Ketu, your personal path, the nakshatra of your Ketu and where it's placed. Your Ketu is feeding your Rahu, and people start mimicking the fruits that you're producing from your Ketu feeding and nourishing your Rahu, and they're identifying with your own individuation process in which you need to externalize the things that you're channeling from your Ketu in order to achieve your destiny. And it's already hard enough for a person to manifest their Rahu. It's very stressful and difficult. And that's why once you start manifesting your Rahu, you can feel really protective and frantic over the things that you're producing. When a person copies you in your personal essence and path, they start distorting and ruining your creations or ideas and make them cheap and common, or created or said from a shallow and arid place with the imperfect rational mind, because the very fact that they're copying you shows that they didn't access those creations or ideas through their own divine inspiration, and essentially they're making it harder for you to manifest your Rahu. So if someone's Rahu is not being fed by their own personal Ketu, which I talk about a lot in the videos that I'll pop up on the screen now, their Rahu craves to be something so badly that he begins copying the externalized skill, the status, the creations of a person, rather than to produce knowledge, produce understanding, produce creations, which again ties into what we saw in Hasta and some scholars being of the opinion that Rahu owns Virgo, Hasta's Rashi. So those who insist on written scriptures, or who make you feel more helpless and dependent on external teachers or cultures or behaviors or doctrines, they're victims of this curse of the written word. And those who tell you that all you need is within you and that you can obtain secrets from everything around you are those who are knowers or Gnostics. The creations or teachings of those who inspire you to go inward and access gnosis are helpful because they strengthen you and support you over time to become self-sufficient. But then the creations or teachings of those who make you feel energetically submissive to them, or frantic to copy them or to submit to them, even if they don't mean for that, that's dangerous for you if you're working on individuating. And you should actually distance yourself from that person's creations or avoid them when you're at this fragile state, especially with mimicking someone in like a creative sense and not as a spiritual teacher. If someone's light is too bright, you become like a moth that gets threatened to burn in their light, and it shows you have some kind of weakness. And you need to actually avoid that person because their light is tempting and blinding you away from your own defined path. And you start wanting to jump on their path instead. And this seems to happen a lot in astrology with a few things that I'll mention. First, I've talked about this before. You may begin copying people with the Ketu nakshatra of your moon. And that's not just going to apply to pretty much any random person walking around whose Ketu is your moon. It will be the people that actually channeled the truth of that Ketu nakshatra and started to produce special works on that nakshatra, which is very rare. The flip side of this, and the thing that I would say is more common, is when you yourself are still out of control of your daimon, because you haven't started accessing your own gnosis and you haven't started controlling your kundalini, or you're at the very early stages of that, which is really normal. It takes a long time to do those things. And most people, of course, are just completely unaware of even trying to do those things. So they're stuck in this state forever, for a really long time. So that's when I talked about the dangers of your Ketu in the creative channeling with your daimon video, where when you're out of control of your daimon, you just kind of are getting sucked into your Ketu realm in a dangerous sense that kind of sucks you in to lead you to stagnation, to energy loss, to not achieving your destiny, all those kind of things. So if you're still kind of being stuck in your Ketu realm in a dangerous way, you will often copy people with a primary placement, especially the ascendant, but can be any of the primary placements of your Ketu nakshatra, because what you're doing is you desperately want to become your Ketu embodied more. So you're being sucked back into your foundation and failing to carry out your own destiny, which is then shown by your Rahu, which is nourished when your Ketu is balanced and no longer controlling you, but you're controlling it. So at that point, when you actually get your Rahu to be nourished from your Ketu and you're no longer being threatened to be sucked into your Ketu, you're no longer trying to produce things with your Rahu when you have nothing feeding it and you're actually failing at it. At that point, when the two connect, everything that you desired to be when you were weak and you were copying people who embody physically your Ketu, you now become the absolute essence and font of truth for that nakshatra, which happens only to the rare people who really cultivate these abilities. And I mentioned in that Ketu Daimon video the dangers of actually interacting with people who have placements that strongly interact with your Ketu. It's dangerous because you can start falling in love with a personification of your Ketu on the astral and confusing that when it's actually kind of threatening to absorb you. So that's why I said in that Daimon video, don't get confused that you're dreaming about the same guy over and over, that you're meant to be with him. Because especially if he has a nakshatra of your Ketu placement, which he probably will if you're dreaming of him over and over, he's just being a personification of your Daimon, which if you let that control you and you fall in love with it, you're actually being confused and pulled back into that realm in a dangerous sense. Because Ketu is that thing which you need to control. In European culture and in the Bhagavad Gita, they describe the human body as a tree with the roots as the crown chakra. So this is why the headstand has esoteric significance. So if you think about that in terms of Rahu and Ketu, Ketu is so key in your ultimate destiny, but it's also your root and your foundation that leads to that destiny. Rahu is what threatens you from returning home and what threatens to destroy your foundation if you approach it too quickly. And Ketu can absorb you if you do not have any desire to show your externalize creations, contribute things to the world, and externalize the things that you're channeling from your Ketu. So you copy other people when you lose contact with your solar light. Ketu is like smoke, so it along with Rahu are the main things that can threaten to obscure our contact with our solar light and become food for someone else's destiny instead of your own destiny by absorbing us, in Ketu's case, into the past. This is why Ketu is also used in killing magic, because when a person cuts off from the light, they become still and they die. If a person gets in touch with their Ketu, they get in touch with the font of truth because they connect the body to the head and their rational mind is fed by universal truth. So Ketu can be either the most helpful thing or one of the most harmful things to a person along with Rahu, and is usually the main relation to copying or being copied by others, just as Rahu and Ketu are the very distinction between this concept of the written rational word being Rahu and the truth or essence of the word, the wordless truth being Ketu. So then what I mentioned that I was going to talk about earlier in the video, eventually, even to become a true individual, you have to leave behind anyone you think of who is literally your guru, because without doing so, you're the parrot of your guru. You're accepting the excrement, basically, of your guru as a copy of him or her. But to cross the abyss, you have to access and follow your intuition and give up on any teachers or instructors in order to fully individuate. And that's why it's said that all adepts face the gate of the sanctuary alone. And why even in Western Occultism, Crowley said that you have to give up your guardian angel, which is basically the Western equivalent of a guru, because he specifically said it's not your higher self, it's an objective individual. You have to give up even the guardian angel to cross the abyss. That allows you to shed all of your lunar traits once and for all, because before that you were just copying and relying on your rational mind and reflecting solar light from others, and you needed to be told to do something. And now if you successfully cross the abyss, you have access to your intuition, and you never need to rely on anything to really explain anything to you, because you're a complete being on your own, and everything that you learn, you eat it and understand it yourself. The exception to this is the interplay between a woman, and as the moon, she's a reflection of her consort's sun. So the woman, or the person in the relationship that's identifying as the yin being, the reflective being, that's the only time where copying is not dangerous, because a spiritual couple becomes like one being. They become like a universe themselves of this interplay between the sun and the moon and how these work together to create. But of course, even a woman, if she's copying someone who's not her consort or hasn't taken her as a consort, that completely makes her lost because she never joins in this play to actually become fertilized by something and then start producing creations from that interplay. In ancient Egypt, we find the concept of the Ka, which is the ghost of a living person, which is the lunar human personality that doesn't give off light on its own and which threatens to destroy a person's connection to their soul if they don't actually individuate from it and if they desire to copy others. This part of the subtle body is associated with the Swadhisthana chakra, which again ties it to Ashleisha and Hasta that I was talking about recently, which give women a lot of power because women themselves are meant to embody the mercurial lunar energies, whereas for a man to do so, it's dangerous because he can lose his Ku, which is the solar light reflecting in his heart chakra, the Anahata chakra, which then causes him to negate or abdicate his Kabs, which is his personal star or destiny, which is the Sahasrara crown chakra, and is connected to the Ketu in the chart, from being content to drain light or steal from others rather than recognize or embody his own. In Jamaica, there's a practice known as Obeah, and practitioners of this art will catch the ghosts of living people, which they call duppies, which then allows them to control that person. They also catch and use ghosts of people who died and are no longer living and send them after people, which is why these practitioners are so strongly feared for their destructive power. It's interesting to note that duppies and ghosts are said to have a form of what is classified as a kind of obsessive compulsive disorder known as arithmomania, where if you spill a large number of objects like a bag of rice, the ghost can't help but stop and count all the objects, which stops them from pursuing a victim. And this again ties to the lunar ghostly copying part of the human personality known as the Ka in Egypt, to Hasta nakshatra behavior as well as to the Swadhisthana and Mercury related behaviors in general, and explain why these traits are viewed as inauspicious and dangerous in many cultures. The Ka is essentially the Ape of Thoth because it's the ghostly terrestrial part of an individual which has no light of its own and seeks to steal or ape the light given off by solar things. So how do we obtain knowledge for ourselves directly and not just rely on others for it? The only way is really through rigorous self-analysis and self-reflection. And it is from doing these activities that we learn about the other being that lives both within and outside of us, that is our personal god or daimon, which allows us to nourish ourselves from every single thing that happens to us. Thanks so much for watching this video, and like I said, I'm going to be trying to put out little videos in between the bigger presentation videos, so make sure to comment below if you have any video requests. You can follow me on Instagram at Claire Cosmetique for more articles, and I also, along with posting this video, am going to be posting a really awesome quote on the subject of the dangers of copying other people, which I recommend just checking that out even if you don't have an Instagram and aren't planning on following me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.